Well, but I'll be pretty. Happy science.
Thank you. Yeah, that's what
Are they going yeah. Yeah, I mean, my battery's not there. Where was the business?
Yeah. Well,
Virtually.
feel like we have to, yeah, we see that virtually, something like that. Yeah.
Well, glad to finally meet you in person.
Yeah, definitely, and meet you.
All right, everybody, I'm going to go ahead and get us started. But please feel free to continue grabbing food, coffee. We'll have that for y'all. Also, hopefully everyone had a chance to sign in, but if you didn't, signage sheets at the back. Also, just a little housekeeping, if you need to use the restroom, the restrooms are located in the back of the building. Right past all the computers, you'll run right into them. So also just want to introduce myself, Sarah Garza. I'm the Director of Mobility Industry Partnerships here at Workforce Solutions. We are happy to be convening this workshop with our partners Movability and Rural Capital Area. So thank you all for joining us. We're going to dive into a really amazing discussion about transportation solutions that hopefully help assist your workforce, your students, what other populations you guys might be working with. But before we kick into that conversation, I just wanted to do a little. It was working earlier. Well, I'll just do that. So I wanted to share a little bit about Workforce Solutions capital area. So some of you may know we launched the Austin Infrastructure Academy back in March. So this is just a little snapshot of that event. We had 306 job seekers come out. That was 28 employers who participated. 11 training providers participated. We had 32 unique media stories about the event. And why I mention this is one of the things that the Infrastructure Academy is looking is not just to help connect individuals to jobs and careers in mobility and infrastructure, but also to solve for barriers like transportation. And so it's kind of a timely discussion today. It's going to be folded into the operations of the Academy, how we're connecting folks to the job sites, to the offices. So that's a key component that we're exploring as we work out and continue to work through the Austin Infrastructure Academy. And then, oh, now it's working, yay. So it's very aligned with our current services. So this is just a little snapshot of our services. This is dated from 2022 to 2024. We provided 33 bus tickets and over 7,000 gas cards. And all in all, the funding that we supported through these transportation services was over 100,000. So we're hoping to continue that work, particularly in some of our offering additional mobility solutions outside of just gas cards and bus tickets, but really partnering with Movability so that we can work through Movability and offer employer services, transportation demand management services that are going to help connect your workforce to your job sites. So this workshop will hopefully be a reoccurring thing, but we are also recording it so we can share this information in the future to interested employer partners as well. And with that, Sarah, did you want to, yeah.
Two Sarahs today.
I know. So this is Sarah from Rural Capital Area.
Hi, everyone. I'm the Chief Business Development Officer for Workforce Solutions Rural Capital Area. We cover the 9 counties around Travis. So think of us as a 10-county family. Is everyone familiar with what a workforce board is? Kind of? Okay. So think about the state of Texas divided into 28 puzzle pieces. And each of those puzzle pieces are boards that the federal and state government pass money down to. So think of us as holders of money and workforce expertise. We're trying to get that money out to our counties that we oversee and support for workforce initiatives. So today we're here to talk about infrastructure and mobility, but as you need anything to support your workforce, whether it be training for your employees, a new pipeline because you just can't find people who are skilled, if you need wraparound services, or your job seekers in your area so that they can be supported to work for you. If you just need something creative and you need a partner to help you design it, that is me and the two Sarahs, Sarah Square. So we're here to support today. Happy to chat with you after this. And thank you so much to Capital Area for hosting and Mobility for schooling us today. Nice to meet you all.
Thank you. And with that, I'm going to just share, if you're interested in joining one of our priority groups, that's kind of the call to action today. Obviously, you'll have the opportunity to meet with Movability, but under the sector partnership, we have various priority groups, and one of them is focused on these employment barriers, talking through things like transportation, but also childcare, language access. So if you're interested in learning a little bit more about what that priority group and diving into those conversations a little bit more deeply, we'd be happy to have you. So this will take you to a HubSpot form where you can declare your interest. Great. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Lonny, who is going to walk us through his presentation, and then we'll open it up for discussion and questions.
Thanks, Sarah. And, do I need to speak into a microphone for
No.
recording?
No, you shouldn't. Yeah. Mhm.
Great. Exciting. Thank you. Well, thanks everybody for being here today. And I'm excited to be able to share this news with you. I've been seeking different ways to share this information, which will be ramping up over the next 5 years. But today we'll be walking through some basic things like who is movability, and then what is this transportation demand management thing that we're talking about? Because I assume a lot of you are not in transportation like I am. And we'll talk about the programs that we currently offer, because you don't need to wait for the federal funds to benefit from what Movability has to offer currently for you and your clients. But there is a lot of construction going on in the region. It's already started. If you've been on I-35, you probably noticed that. But there are a lot of other projects, which we'll talk about in a sec. And because of that, our region has landed a $50 million grant in the region to deal with getting to and from work because of those construction impacts. And that's what I wanted to speak with you about today, because those funds are meant to go to employers and employees. And it's very easy for me to go to the largest employers first. But that means that the smallest employers may not benefit unless they hear about it. And I'm hoping that you can help us to spread the word so that way all of us benefit rather than the largest employers only in the region. And then I'll share some examples of what we mean. How could this benefit you? And I'm just going to take it from some slides that we shared with J.E. Dunn, which is the construction company that is building the convention center at the moment. So if you're in construction, you might be able to immediately plug and play and put this into your plan. All right, so with that, first, Movability is a transportation management association, and we're the only ones in Central Texas doing this. And our goal is to build a region around people, not cars. Largely, we focus on reducing drive-alone commuting, and that can take lots of different forms. All of it is transportation demand management, which means instead of focusing on building more roads, we focus on reducing the demand for the roadway. So that could be things that you're thinking of like transit or buses, but it could also be things like just sharing the car. So it could be carpools or van pools or shuttles, things of that nature. All right, so why transportation demand management? I mean, the first thing is very obvious. We live in a very congested region. It's getting worse all the time. We're adding 70 cars to the road each day. So if you don't like the commute today, it's going to be worse tomorrow. So just strap yourself in. And we are doubling as a region from 2 million to 4 million people, but the roadways are not going to be doubling in size. So what we have is a geometry problem where we're trying to move twice the number of people in the same amount of space. What I'm showing you here, you may have seen an image like this before. I'm not sure I've seen it as many times, but this is what 70 people could look like on the road. We've got 70 people in a bus, and then 70 people on bikes. And then the third one is a lie, because that's 70 people, and then that's 35 cars. That's not 70 cars. It wouldn't fit on my slide to show you 70 cars. So one takeaway is, maybe you can't take a bus or bike to work. Maybe you have to drive. But if you can carpool, you'll take up half as much space as if you drove alone. And that is a huge difference to what it's like on the road. And a lot of people think that they're stuck in traffic, but the truth is, you are traffic. So if you can get yourself out even once a week, you're doing a big favor to everybody in the community, because if you're commuting to work 5 days a week, one time a week, you decide that's your active or shared commute day, that's a 20% reduction in your contribution to the traffic. And that's really all we're looking for. And so we are encouraging people to choose some of these modes. Now, why is partly because of work that we're doing in the city of Austin. They identified in 2019 that 3 out of 4 people were driving alone to work. And the goal is by 2039 to get that down to 50-50. So half using a car and half using some other mode. And, for spoilers, I'll tell you that we do an annual commuter survey in the region. And this year, we found that 66% were driving alone. So we're making progress with going from 75% to 66%. And we saw huge increases in biking, as well as in believe it or not, transit use, but we saw a real drop in carpooling. In fact, our region is at 2.5% carpooling rate, whereas most cities our size are at an 8.5% carpooling rate. So you may have noticed online, we are advertising focus groups at the moment. We're paying $100, a $100 HEB gift card for participants. We'll be hosting 3 focus groups over the next month, trying to understand people's perceptions of carpooling so we can understand how to market and advertise to people more effectively to increase that carpool rate. But moving on, I wanted to let you know a little bit about the movability programs, and it's partly just so you know about them, but partly because the federal grant is expanding the reach of these programs. So when I get to that part, you won't understand what we're talking about unless you know what the programs are. So we start with research, and I've already mentioned one thing, which is the annual commuter survey. And we've been doing this survey over a 3-county region, and now because of federal funding, it'll expand to the 6-county region. In addition to that, we do white papers and focus groups. We talked about the carpool focus group. We've done a white paper on traffic in Mueller. We are planning the carpool one. We have gotten a request about Zilker Park mobility. But if you have a mobility issue that's affecting your organization or community, we're also done for hire for that kind of work. In addition, the main thing that we do is offer TDM professional services. And the form that this takes is usually working with a major employer. We put together a plan for parking and mobility for their workforce. And we'll start with a survey of the workers and ask, where do you live? Where do you work? What time do you commute? What modes do you use? What modes would you consider? Why or why not are you using them? Maybe there are barriers in place. And then we wind up communicating back to the employer what plan we would recommend. Sometimes there are barriers in place that you might not know, like childcare being on site, or most recently we were talking about somebody not wanting to bike to work because there wasn't a hair dryer in the locker room, and they needed to finish up their hair routine. And so, being able to give a grant to that employer to update their locker room facility makes the difference for that particular commuter. So we'll wind up finding out about that. We'll make the plan, put it in place, and then do outreach on site. It could be presentations like this, it could be tabling. We have also taken people off site using those zones, which we'll talk about more. And then we'll follow up with focus groups and reports to explain how it's going and make updates. In addition, we have Get There Central Texas. Some of you may be familiar with Campo's Commute Solutions, which is an online platform where you can plan a trip or look for carpools or vanpools. But on top of that, we offer incentives for people to use that platform. So every month we do drawings for different contests based on your commute. This month is bike month. So for May, if you're reporting your trips and you commute to work twice a week by bike, you automatically get a $25 gift card to HEB each week for the month of May. And we've already had several winners for that. And so you can get $125 this month just for biking. But we've also had other challenges, like there's the game day challenge during the soccer season. If you use any active or shared mode on a soccer day, you're entered into the contest for that month, and it's a drawing. And we have different prizes. We've had prizes that were like date nights or tickets to a show or ACL festival, and they just change each month. But tracking your trips is difficult on its own. So first, we reward people with a guaranteed ride home. So that if you wind up coming to work, let's say in a carpool or a vanpool, and your kid gets sick and you need to go home, we'll pay for that trip home if you need a cab or something like that, up to 7 times a year. But further, tracking, people forget to track, or maybe they're saying they did something, and they're not sure if they did that. So we partnered with a company called Carbon Cred, which is a Canadian firm, and they have a mobile app where all you have to do is download the app and put in your home address and your work address and the make and model of your car. And after that, it tracks all of your trips for you. And it knows if it's a bus trip, a bike trip, and if 2 or more of you have the app on your phone, it knows it is a carpool. And currently, it will give you your carbon offset in cash on your phone. In addition, and we'll talk about this more, the federal grant is making it possible for us to piggyback on this and provide $5 a day every time you choose not to drive alone if you download the app. And just as an aside, we know that for some people, putting your home address is risky. So that was part of the reason we partnered with a Canadian firm, but also we know that it's possible to give a slightly altered address or an intersection, so that way we can say we don't have their address. You can have our data, but you can't actually have their home address. In addition to that, we host mobility camps. These are offsite tours. It can be team builders. Usually it's taking a train or a bus, but we've also had requests for scooters or bike share trips as well. And the idea is not just for the fun of it, like they are fun trips, I'm not going to take anything away. But the idea is if you're going to tell somebody to take the bus or to work for the first time, that is a very stressful trip to do correctly on your own the first time. But if instead you decide, like, let's go to happy hour, let's go on a scavenger hunt, or let's go for lunch or coffee using the bus, they learn in a really low stakes environment and they have fun. So they have this positive association with it. And that way that first trip isn't quite so scary anymore. They know how to do it. And it wasn't like a lecture in a classroom where I'm like, so first you use the ticket like this, and then they don't retain any of that information. It's more muscle memory. In addition to that, we've got school pool. May not pertain to everyone in here, but we are scaling this program to create car pools, walk pools, and bike pools at schools around the region. We piloted this program with 7 schools, and this year we're moving to 12 or 14. I know Pflugerville ISD is looking at them. We have some charters and privates as well as AISD. So if your school, we're really trying to target middle school, to be honest. I think that's where we've gotten the best traction. But if your school hasn't signed up for that yet and you're interested in joining the pilot, we still have room for the 25-26 year. But again, the federal grant is going to be for 5 years. So if you're not ready for the next school year, we could talk about the 26-27 instead. Then there's Move Pass, which is a transit discount program. If you work with Cap Metro and you buy in bulk, you're a big organization. You can buy in bulk. You'll get a discount of up to 30% off of a monthly pass. But if you can't buy in bulk, you get no discount. And so we buy in bulk. So that way, even if you're a small business or a nonprofit, we can get the bulk discount for you. And it is a fee-for-service program, so you pay for our administration. But in the first year, the administration's fully covered and you get the discount. And then in year 2, you pay a little bit of our administration, and in year 3, you fully pay for our admin for it. The idea is you don't need to have staff members to run your transportation program. You can just outsource that and we'll take care of it for you. And then there's Go Grants. Many of you may have already interacted with us. This is up to $7,500 a year. And we offer 2 pools for this, one in the springtime and one in the fall. So we'll announce our next tranche of funds at the end of the summer. The idea is if you have a program that will reduce drive alone commuting, we can fund that program. And it can be a program or infrastructure or planning. So you might say, I don't know what to do, let's plan something. And we'll cover the cost, so you don't have to go out of pocket making a plan. It could be a infrastructure, that's the easy one. You're like, I want to put in bike racks. I want to put in lockers or showers or the hairdryer or whatever. Those are easy. You know exactly what you want to do. Program, people sometimes don't know what that means, but let's say you wanted to launch a van pool program. That's a program, you know, and I'm giving program funds, but there's nothing physical there to point to. That would count. But maybe I'm subsidizing the first 3 to 6 months of the van pool to get them going. That would count as a programmatic grant. But it would be infrastructure if I put a sign like for Princess Parking for those van pool folks saying like, all right, this is where the van pool parks. That'd become an infrastructure grant. Yeah.
Quick question, is Go Grant part of that 50 million due to construction impacts, or is this a separate grant program that you have available?
That's a great question. So the answer is yes and no. So on the one hand, the federal funds are going to make it so that Go Grant expands. So first, Go Grant was funded by the city of Austin, and up until now, you could only get a Go Grant if your organization was within the city of Austin. And now Go Grant is available within the 6-county region. So that is the first improvement. The second is that we had only $60,000 a year to work with, and now it's going up to $150,000 within Go Grant. In addition, the CPRG grant is making it so that way, if you make a plan with us as an employer on a project, then you don't really have to go through the Go Grant process. We're going to fund your project out of the CPRG grant instead. So this is if you have a smaller project where you've got an idea and you're ready to go on that project. But if you're a larger employer, if you've got if I'm working with Tesla and they've got 8,000 employees, they're not going to want a $7,500 grant. I'm not going to make them do that. We're going to make a plan, and then we're going to talk about what we're funding, and they're just going to go through CPRG. But if you're a smaller organization and you want to go through Go Grant, I now have more funds and I can fund much further out.
Sorry, follow-up question. Has anyone who's applied for this ever asked their EDC to match the grant? So if that was the.
I can't say, but anytime I go for grants, I always see matching.
Yes.
And I try to rinse and repeat with another grantor. All right, so let's see, moving on. We also recognize the best workplaces for commuters. There's a national recognition with best workplaces, and if you're a member of Movability as an employer, we will fill out the application for you, we'll pay the national registration fee, and then we host a local a Central Texas Award ceremony where you can get plaques and trophies and things of that nature as well. All right, so I want to stop there, and before we move on to the construction bit, to see if there are any questions about the programs we offer before we move on, start talking about CPRG stuff and the construction. Yeah.
If you get a Go Grant, is there a grant sort of manager on the mobility side that's checking in with you? There is.
Yeah, so somebody from Movability winds up reviewing it. There's a whole committee that decides on the grant. You may not get the full grant amount. And there's somebody assigned to walk through the grant with you, and then we'll be following up with you for data collection and also make sure that you've done the work itself. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, so for your school pool program, I know that you're saying that you're definitely pushing it towards middle schoolers, but did that apply for the colleges as well, or no, only?
We've really been focusing on K through 12. Because it's to deal with the pickup and drop off lines that are causing congestion in front of those schools. So we really haven't been working with colleges at this point. Yeah, I've thought about it because of Concordia being completely off the transit network, but there isn't that same pickup drop off line problem that's concentrated. Yeah.
Yeah, so usually for K through 12, if you're outside of a 2-mile radius, it's maybe a bus. So are you more concentrating on the people who don't get that service because they're within the 2-mile radius and you're trying to get them carpool so they can,
we're not being specific about who we're targeting there. There are people who are within the 2-mile radius that will benefit, but there are people who are outside the 2-mile radius that are still driving their kids to school. So if they're driving their kids to school, we're trying to reach them. But to be fair, we have worked with public and private and charter schools. And I'll agree with you, I would like to be working with schools that don't have busing. But even the in-district charter schools have a new situation this year where they're having to go to a hub location to get busing to their charter school. And parents aren't that happy about that situation. And so they're interested in it. All right. Let's see, Sarah, do you have a question?
I was gonna ask if you expand on school pool, so for both summer, but you did, so that's good.
Okay. All right, well, if there are no other questions, I'll keep going about construction. So at this point, construction is going to define the next decade in this region. There's so many projects going on. And what I'd recommend that you do, if you haven't heard of this already, is to look up the construction partnership program, and the website is constructctxpartnership.org. And you can find that information on, also, I'm sure these slides will be shared later if you want to take a look. I've just highlighted these top projects that you may have already heard about, but there are 50 some projects on this map. And it's important for me to mention this map because as this map updates, these are the projects that qualify for assistance with CPRG at this point. So I-35, the convention center, the airport, Oak Hill Expressway, 183 Tollway extension, Project Connect, but then all of these local corridor projects all over the place. If your workers or customers or you yourself are traveling by any of these projects, or if your business is within a half mile of any of these projects, then you're impacted by this construction. So I mean, they've said anybody in this county region is impacted by this construction, so it shouldn't be that hard for me to justify it. But you will be hearing from us with a direct mailer and block walking if you're within a half mile of some of these major projects. But you may not hear from us if you're on project, 28, like on a local road project. You may not. So I just want to make sure that you're familiar with this because you can reach out to us if you know that you're impacted by one of these projects. But ultimately, we need to think about how do we keep Central Texas moving, because part of the problem is if there's all this construction going on, people are going to want to work from home because we know we can, and it's okay if people work from home once or twice a week. But if they work from home all the time, economic activity kind of grinds to a halt. It is bad for local businesses when that happens. The first floor stops being activated, so those shops start getting hurt, and that means sales tax revenue goes down. If people stop going to the office, then office real estate stops recovering, and that also means the construction goes down. That means property tax revenue goes down, and that means property tax rate elections are coming, and we know that one's coming already, and I can imagine more and more and more of this. So this is actually a policy issue. We do need people to leave their houses and circulate. And so we do need them to go to work. So we know we need to do something, and the help is on the way in the form of this grant. So we applied to the EPA, which, believe me, I was freaking out all this year. And also the grant says the word climate pollution in the grants. So that was also another witch hunt we had to go through. But I assure you that as of May 8th, they have started cashing checks for this project. So we are funded and we are ready to move forward. So the goals for this grant are to reduce vehicle miles traveled, as well as greenhouse gases, although I can tell you this administration is laser focused on VMT. And then reducing the congestion, and then ultimately making sure it's durable. So it's one thing to do it during this period, but ultimately we want to see this kind of become a cultural change over time. So if we do this for 5 years, can we maintain some of this?
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
When you said laser focus, in a good way or bad?
I mean, I'm agnostic about it. Let's just say that when we submitted this grant, we knew beforehand to pitch it like they're expanding highways, which is great, but it's going to be hard to get to work, and so we need to do something to get to work. We could have easily written it like they're expanding highways, which is terrible, and we need to do something to deal with all of the air pollution, and we did not write it that way. So for them, they're more concerned about the congestion issue and how to deal with that because of the impact on business, less about the air pollution and the equity issues that come out of that. They don't want to care about public health ramifications. That is not the goal. The goal is reduce the amount of driving per person, so that way there's less congestion, so people can get to work while construction is going on. And then afterwards, they're like, it's on you.
I see the value.
Yeah. So, so what happened was we identified CPRG as a possible funding mechanism. And just, I'm giving you a little background. We first were thinking about the Federal Highway Administration. They have matching grants. The CPRG is not a matching grant. It is just free and clear money. And what happened was the city was working on a few different projects. And it was the sustainability department was looking at like public waste, solar panels, water quality projects, all sorts of stuff to land the CPRG grant. And in the course of doing that, we identified that transportation is the #1 greenhouse gas emission source in Central Texas. And then the Inflation Reduction Act created all these new funding sources for the EPA. And in March of 2024, we got the Priority Climate Action Plan. So we have the plan in place for how could we reduce some of the greenhouse gas emissions. And then we submitted our application last year in April. And it was really like the sustainability department was going to do something else. And then we brought all of our transportation ideas, and then it got stuck. Like we got stuck holding the ball, and we had to submit it with the city. So when we did, we got awarded $48 million for the CPRG grant. And I will show you what it's going for, because it's not just going to movability. This is what it looks like for this coalition. The city is the lead on the grant, and Campo and TxDOT are part of the coalition that needed to be attached to it in order for it to go through. And then CARTS, CapCog, Movability, and CapMetro are the primary delivery partners. So what we're trying to do is reduce greenhouse gas emissions and by reducing vehicle miles traveled. And there's a bunch of math on here, but the main thing to keep in mind here from this slide is that the average person in our region is driving 26 miles per day. And in our region generally, there are 45 million vehicle miles traveled per day. And we are trying to reduce that by 21,000 vehicle miles per day. That is the goal. All right, so when you think about that, we could try to get you to reduce your trip by a little bit. And if we were trying to carpool, that would mean you would go from 26 to 13, right? And so if you're looking at 21,000, that means we're trying to impact 10,000 or fewer people, if you think about it in that way. But it also depends on how much you drive. Like I live only 4 miles from where I work. But if I work with somebody from Tesla who lives in San Antonio, they live 100+ miles from where they work. So this is why I'm saying it's 10,000 or fewer people that we actually have to reach with this grant to make it work. But again, over the course of 5 years. So we think it is doable. So first, just to lay down the track, where did we come up with these ideas? Because I think it's important, there's a lot of naval gazing that happens in Austin. And in this case, what we did was we identified best practices around the country, and then we packaged them all together into this one proposal. So we looked at Seattle. They sunk a highway, kind of like what we're doing, hopefully, or sunk in a trench. But they wound up dropping this highway below, and they were worried about what was going to happen during that construction period. It's a major thoroughfare. And what they did was they increased bus service at that time, and then they provided transit passes to people. They reduced the commuter parking program downtown, and then they introduced flexible schedules for people as well, so that they weren't all coming at 8 and 9 in the morning. And then they also provided one-on-one planning services for employers who were downtown, so that way people would consider what their alternative options were. And what they found was traffic declined along that corridor, almost a quarter. Transit ridership increased significantly, and it was, just to be fair, they added more bus service. So when they had more bus service, by nature, ridership goes up because there's more service available. But still, they got 33,000 new daily riders out of that. And nearly half of them stayed bus riders afterwards because they got used to that. Then in Duluth, they also had a highway project, and they did similar things. They added more transit, they added more park and rides, they added a bus lane, and they added free fares, and then a huge promotional effort, and they had similar results, 26% increase of that transit usage, and then riders continued using transit afterwards. Fewer than 15% stopped after the construction. In Atlanta, they had a lot of ideas that we borrowed here. They started their commute options program, and they did a lot of incentives that we are going to talk about now. They did the Give Me 5 campaign, which was $5 a day. They did incentives for van pooling, where they gave people cash to start it, and the guaranteed ride home program, 5 free rides by taxi or rental car. And they were very successful as well, a huge buy-in. And in fact, the $5 a day program, it started with a couple hundred people, and then word of mouth made it double each year over the 5-year program. So it became a very large program over time. And then Denver, they have had a lot of success with their e-bike program. They give $400, $1,200 vouchers, and where they're ahead of us is at the point of sale. For us, it's a rebate where you have to buy the bike and then wait for them to send it back. There, you can get the rebate right there at point of sale. And because of that, they reported that the people who were receiving these vouchers, which were predominantly aimed at lower income audiences, that there was a huge increase in biking, 26 miles per week on average, and that the lower income participants use their e-bikes 50% more than the higher income folks who got their e-bikes. So again, e-bikes are a part of the project, and we'll talk about that in a second. So starting at the large, and we'll get smaller. The plan right now includes a little over 17 million for improving services, and that means dedicated to Cat Metro carts and shuttling. A little over 7 million for mobility hubs, which includes bike share expansion, counters, as well as air quality monitoring. And then the largest is about 23 million, and that's for transportation demand management interventions and incentives for individuals and for employers.
Question on the shuttle service, is that something you're working individually with employers on the grant, or is that who's administering that part of it?
So it's a matter of some discussion still with the committee. It's going to be a little bit of both. So there's a 3-way tug of war going on, and to your point about piggybacking on grant applications, I'm going to apply for another grant from PMO to expand the shuttle funds this fall. But our hope is working with an employer who has an off-site parking need and that needs to get their employees to the job site. So, for example, you're a construction team working downtown, or maybe at the airport, and they don't want you to park there. So you have to find an off-site lot, and we'll work with you to find that off-site lot. And then you get your employees to that lot, and then they need a last mile connection to the job site. If it can't be transit, then it could be a shuttle, and we would work with you to subsidize that shuttle cost. And we'll talk about that more in a moment. Now, the Downtown Austin Alliance is worried about I-35 coming down and the disconnection between East and West, and they want a kind of a tourist shuttle that circulates to keep people going between the two sides. And then there's Cat Metro that's worried about disruption to the train service downtown and wants a shuttle to connect if the train can't make it to downtown station. And so there's a transportation block grant that's coming this fall, and I'll be applying for more shuttle funding to try to help with that as well. But so far as you're concerned, this is for your employees who may need a shuttle. For example, TxDOT is asking for a shuttle to go from downtown station to their office, and we'll find some way to help them out to some extent. But let's see, this is what the whole grant looks like. And I just want to point out that our portion is this section here. So to quickly run through it, there's about 10 million for Cat Metro service improvements. They're still deciding what to do, but my recommendation had been to increase the commuter service, the big coaches that are on the outer periphery. So that way suburban commuters have more rides available to them, and also they're traveling further, which means their BMT reduction is greater. Carts also has another 2.5 million. I know that they're going to be increasing service down to San Marcos from Georgetown, and they're also launching van pool service. So you don't have to be in the Cat Metro service area anymore to get van pooling offered to you. So that is a new service that Carts will be providing. There's 5 million for shuttles, and then for bike share and bike parking, you can see that's $6.7 million there. So some of it will be shelters, but some of it will be the expansion of the bike share program. Then air quality monitors and pedestrian counters. And then you can see there's a TDM technology platform that's well over $7 million. The idea of that is to have one app for all mobility services. And the city is going to take the lead on that. So I mean, like having your Cat Metro app, your transit app, your Uber app, your bike share app, the carbon credit app, all of it in one mobile app. So that way you don't have to have all of these different apps in different places. You could have it all in one spot. What's that? Well, believe it or not, there are providers that already do this in other cities, and we just need to take it off the shelf and customize it for our providers regionally. But we've been talking about it already for several months. It depends on which provider they choose, on whether or not it's possible. And then multilingual marketing, so $5 million for a marketing campaign. That has not started yet. So when you start seeing billboards about it, then you know that they've started the marketing campaign. But for us, there's $3 million for our regular services that you've seen, $4 million to expand that across the 6-county region, so a doubling of what we're doing, and then $3.5 million for the direct incentives and subsidies that go to employers and employees. So that is what we are trying to distribute over the next 5 years, and I hope to get additional funding to go on top of that. And that's why I'm trying to speak to you today. So to go through what those things are, I mentioned the mobility wallet, and this is going to be the hardest thing for us to distribute. So you'll notice there are these two things in the same bucket of funding, which is $875,000 a year. And if we can't spend it on one thing, we can spend it on the other. So please help with the first one. The mobility wallet is basically a debit card that would be loaded with $100 on it that could only be used for mobility services. So it could be a bus, it could be an Uber, a taxi, a scooter, whatever it is, but it would only be for those purposes. The problem, as I see it, is that it can only be used by people who are living at 200% of the poverty level and below. Now, if it was for the FHWA, that's no problem. Like, they just want to help people who are lower income who need mobility services. But because it's for the EPA grant, it needs to reduce vehicle miles traveled. So these people need to be driving to work alone and now take some active or shared mode instead. So you need to be low income and driving and now switch to some other mode. That is a harder person to find. I'm worried that we're going to send it to a lot of students who are beautiful, low-income people and not actually the intended targeted audience.
So, as you probably saw from my little portion at the beginning, we provide a lot in gas cards.
Yeah.
A lot of our clients are at 200 or below. So, I think it might be helpful to talk through a little bit, maybe offline during separate meeting, but integrating the mobility wallet into our service offerings through the account.
We'd be very happy to do so. I just know it won't be for
Right, couldn't be for that, yeah.
Yeah. But if we can get them on a different mode, or if we even get a driver to just carpool, then that would be great. But the mobility wallet won't pay for their gas.
Right.
But I can still give them $5 a day for that activity.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, usually the more low income you are, the farther away you live
Oh,
from
yeah.
where you work, so less service and less people you work out there. So yeah, I mean that's
Yeah, I want to clarify, I am not depending on transit and bike. In fact, we're only going to push transit and bike where people can transit and bike. It's going to be mostly manual carpool outreach on this program. I mean, especially because if you're trying to get bigger BMT, you're looking further out. So that's not a barrier at all. It's really about finding somebody who's driving, who's living at that wage, and then would convert to not driving alone and would benefit from the card. So if we can't find that, then the other alternative is the Give Me 5 money, which is in the same bucket of funding. So we can spend either way, which is $5 a day up to 90 days a year, every year of the program for your active or shared commute. Now, the only way you can get this is by downloading that Carbon Credit app or whatever master app is created that has Carbon Credit built into it. So that way we can verify immediately your chip. The moment your chip is verified, you're going to get your carbon offset and the $5 a day sent to you through the app immediately. But again, we have some barriers. If you're undocumented, we're gonna have to explain. You don't have to give your home address necessarily. It could be something nearby, but we are capable of doing it in English and Spanish and doing outreach for that. But again, I've been talking to employers. Maybe you want to make that 180 days a year. Maybe you want to make that $10. That's up to you. But what we have is $5 a day up to 90 days a year at this point. Yeah.
That 200% federal poverty level.
Yeah.
Does that vary by city because of standard of living, or is it a flat number across the nation?
I do have to double check if the federal poverty line is going to be different by city. It's probably going to go by county, but it may be just done by NSA just to make it easier. But I will say this is the city's program that we're going to help it administer. So ultimately, it's going to be up to the city's transportation and public works department on how they're going to count the 200%.
The next question comes. Will there be a website, a city group that publishes a dashboard so you know what the heck that is? And I see those things, but when they ask me, well, what number that is,
Yeah, that's part of what the 7 million is for, and then the marketing program. All of that is going to be used to create actual public-facing websites. Right now, this program technically doesn't start until 2026, and what we're trying to do is get ahead of this, so that way you have your plan in place and you're at the front of the line, so that way we can launch. But yes, there will be public-facing websites and about each of these programs. And some of it may just be incorporated onto our website, so that way you can access it there. Yeah.
So my business or the company I work for is based in North Georgetown. So
Okay.
right where the toll road and 35 connect.
Yep.
We get a very large population of our employees coming in from Glen.
Okay.
And Glen, Fort Hood, Temple, all of those general areas. Seeing as how this is only for kind of Travis, Williamson, and the surrounding counties, is there anything that would work or any way that this would partner with another area to be able to offer some type of incentive to get more people to carpool?
Well, so it's going to be the 6-county region. So the $5, it's for Williamson, Travis, Hayes, Bastrop, Burnett, Caldwell.
Right. But what I'm saying is we're pulling people from Temple, which is spelled Fort Hood and another area, which is Coryell County. All of those counties are coming into Williamson County.
Right.
So they're starting outside, but coming in to work. Would it still apply to them?
Yes, because they're coming into one of the 6 counties and they're creating traffic on the road.
Okay.
Just like if you're a van pulling from Killeen, but you come into the region, then you qualify for CalMetro's program. It's the same thing.
Okay.
You just have to come into or out of our 6-county region to qualify. And they have to download the app just so we can verify. Yeah.
So as a business, you usually have like HR information on whether somebody has a family, if they're choosing to, do healthcare with you. So for the federal poverty line, I know there's a difference between if you're single and you have a family of 4.
Yeah.
So are you looking for that partnership to just kind of do the verification part of it to make sure that, because if you have a family of 4, it's like 60,000. If you're single, it's only 15, so that's only 30,000. You can actually double it by having a family.
Right. So it's not going to be, it's going to be based on the table for what 200% federal poverty line is. And that's going to be based on how large your household is. I don't want to be in the business of qualifying people. I would much rather it come through a social service agency that's sending us qualified people. And that's why I'm trying to spread the word about this.
Okay.
But the question about whose poverty line are we talking about? That's a real question that I can't answer today, but the city can. But we'll wind up putting the table up just like you would qualify for affordable housing. It's a matrix. But again, I do think it'll be nonprofit organizations sending people to us to qualify for it versus having kind of an open door the 85. It's like if you download the app, you're getting $5. You don't have to really apply for anything. versus the other one will probably have information on it, but you have to contact us for more information. That'll be a slightly harder thing to do directly.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Really excited to hear that Vernon is a part of this, because it's so tricky. Excuse me, because you have to go around the lake essentially to get to places like Buffalo Falls. Are there like specific, very rural solutions that you guys are considering for places like Marble Falls, or is it similar modality, probably van pools?
Yeah, it's similar programs. The difference is just that when we work with an employer, we're gonna create a custom plan for you. But if we don't work with you as an employer directly, then it's gonna be just the blanket approach where you as an individual can benefit from participating in a program. But you as an employer may have a very different need. So it could look very different. It may be that being out in Marble Falls, we're not even gonna touch biking or transit for you. It's all gonna be van pool and carpool. But it may be that they need telework and flex schedule options as well, or they need childcare partnerships out there. Because all of their people are driving across the region to go for childcare, and they may find that they need a childcare benefit that's closer to them. So it really just depends on who we're talking to.
Can two employers partner? The reason I'm asking is, for instance, we have a partner that employs a very large contingent labor population to support our manufacturing operations.
Yeah.
So in that service, a lot of those being more skilled labor, lowering end of the threshold, they're the ones that are driving them further from the plant. So if we were to be able to partner or offer something, potentially split costs or do something that would allow the larger population, that would benefit us.
Yes, we would love that. The larger the syndicate, the better. Even the better chances of being moved up higher on the priority list. Just because the larger group we can serve, the better. All right, I'm going to move on a little bit and just of the programs that we spoke about, we're going to use the grant to offer no-cost services for the TDM planning and then case studies that come out of this project. As well as for transit passes, we can offer that with no administrative fee and for park and ride solutions. We're going to be subsidizing some services. So for van pool benefits, if you launch a van pool program, we will come up with, depending on the size and what you're doing, we'll come up with a tapered benefit for the first 3 to 6 months. Now, Cat Metro already subsidizes 50% up front. We will provide an additional subsidy for the first 3 to 6 months that will start very generous and get less so. So that way, those riders have some skin in the game and they're paying as they go along, but it becomes, it starts very, very inexpensive. And then for shuttling, for those park and ride solutions. But I just want to be clear, we're not just going to pay for shuttles. It's based on how many people take an active and shared trip to that shuttle location. So if you drive alone to a shuttle, then the employer might get to the shuttle. But if you take bus or you van pool or carpool, based on the percentage of people who do that, which we can verify with the app, then we will subsidize each shuttle seat based on that. So that way the employers have some skin in the game of encouraging the active commute to the shuttle. And then if your company already has a shuttle, we'll subsidize shuttle growth rather than leave that alone. And then in addition, we're just expanding, as we talked about, regionally and the number of programs. So in terms of priority communities, we are prioritizing construction first. So literally the people building these projects, they are very parking constrained. So we're starting there, then educators, then hospitality and service and retail that are all surrounding these projects because they're going to be the first line. Our second line is healthcare and manufacturing, first responders and white collar. And you might think that healthcare would be slam dunk, but they have these huge free parking garages. And so they have been less used than you would think. And the same with manufacturing, they tend to have large surface free parking lots. So they're a little less excited. That doesn't mean that you can't come to us, but I'll tell you, it's totally the same thing. They weren't as excited as I thought they would be. So if you want to prove me wrong, please come talk to us. All right, so what does this look like in practice? Well, we've already talked about this. Parking's expensive. So this is what I was talking about with JE done. Downtown parking is $300 a month. If you park on the street, it could be even worse, partly because of ticketing and not being able to get there. And so we talked about parking cash out. So there's 3 different ways that you could go. Depends on what you're doing. So if you're an employer that pays for parking spots for your employees, maybe through your lease, I can guarantee you that about 10 to 20% of your employees don't actually need that parking spot. They may already be coming through some other mode, or they would if they didn't have access to a free spot. Definitely your finance and your admin people who don't leave the office would be convinced otherwise. So if you were to say like, wow, that parking spot is worth $300, you can already, there's a federal tax option to give a commuter benefit to your employee in pre-tax dollars up to $325 a year. Up to $325 a month, tax-free for your employees. And you could use it for parking, or you could use it for transit passes, or et cetera. So you could say, I will give you the cash equivalent of your parking spot, or less than the cash equivalent of your parking spot, and you decide what to do with it. And some people will pocket the money and buy a transit pass. Some will pocket the money and split the ride in carpool or vanpool. And others will just buy a parking spot and go in and out. And so some will do the $300 now, and then next year when the price of parking goes up, they will not increase that subsidy. And so what happens for businesses is it creates a stable subsidy for their employees. Even though the cost of parking goes up, they never experience that rising cost. But I will say as an aside, I work downtown in the Austin Hilton, which is right next to the convention center, and our employees do not get parking. We get $180 a month commuter stipend, and it works. So it's much less than the $300 it costs to give everybody a parking spot in that garage. Before we get to option number 2, I keep saying vanpool, but I want to make sure everybody knows that vanpool and carpool are really different. And so, carpooling, it's your personal car. It could be formal or informal. You probably pick up door to door. Maybe you exchange money, maybe you don't. Maybe you register online to find each other, maybe you just know one another. Vanpooling is a formal program. In the Austin area, Cat Metro and Enterprise Rent-A-Car have a program that they run together. And you could get a minivan, you could get an SUV, you can get a large conversion, and it's up to you which one you want. But groups of 4 or more can start a vanpool, or you can just join an existing one. It's basically a lease of a vehicle. So that way you put the mileage on their car instead of on your own car. And it covers the things a lease would, but also the maintenance and insurance and the roadside assistance that comes with that car. And then whomever is driving the car gets to keep the car and gets a mileage allowance as well. So there's a benefit for being the driver. And some teams actually trade who the driver is so that they all can benefit from having the car. But it allows you to be a 0 or 1 car household. So that way you're not stealing the car from your household to park the car at work all day. And then you get a guaranteed ride home through that program as well. And Enterprise is launching a new flex program this year. So you don't have to commit to 5 days a week. You can do it 2 or 3 days a week if you want to instead. All right. So with vanpooling on. Questions about vanpooling. Great.
Because I remember when we originally spoke about this.
Yeah.
I think it needed to be within Cat Metro's service area. Is that correct still?
So
does that apply for Bastrop County?
Yeah, so there's 2 different things going on. So this is great to clarify. So the vanpool program in place today from Cat Metro, you have to either live or work in the Cat Metro service area. So we do have people coming from Killeen and coming from San Antonio who work in the Austin metro area, and they could qualify, and then vice versa. People who start here and go there, and they qualify. But if they're outside the Cat Metro service area and they never touch it, there is no vanpooling right now. But the funding that we got for carts is giving them enough funding to launch their own vanpool service.
And we have carts. That was
Yes.
my follow-up question.
Yes.
Can carts implement this utilizing their van?
Yes, so if you're in carts,
that.
so if you're in the cart service area, they will be launching vanpool because of CPRG funding.
Okay, that's
Yes.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So you could talk to them about it and see if they're interested, or I can connect you if you don't have to.
We're connected.
Great.
But we will have you speak to them.
All right, so then option number 2 is the offsite parking like we were talking about. So we might encourage them to go to an offsite lot, and I might have to help find places like downtown. I'm talking to the city about different parks that are underparked during the day, so that way we can park there for free and then shuttle out. But we would offer free or discounted transit passes to their employees to get to that lot. We would recommend that people carpool to that lot or vanpool, we can subsidize that, and then offer a shuttle that goes from that site to the work site. And again, we can subsidize the shuttle based on that other behavior. And if you need shuttles, we've got a ton of shuttle providers. We can help with the bidding or just give it to you and you can bid out your shuttle. And then the last one is on-site parking, and we're currently negotiating with the convention center itself, but we would recommend if you have a garage, considering this policy too, you want fewer people to show up with their car. So if somebody comes with their car alone, they should pay the most. And then if somebody comes in a carpool, they should pay less. And if they come in a van pool, they should pay the least. And we are recommending that for the downtown parking garages because they're gonna get flooded. But we're also recommending it for things like Zilker Park. If you're parking challenged, families should pay less than the single person who shows up and takes up a whole parking spot on the weekend when parking is limited. So we'll keep pushing that policy, and we recommend it by you as well. All right, and then just as I mentioned for carbon cred, it will eventually have the $5 a day addition. Right now, again, it's just your carbon offset. So depending on if you've got an F350 or a hybrid, and whether you live 2 miles or 100 miles from downtown will determine how much you're making each year. For me, I live close by and I ride the bus, although I do have an SUV. And so I've made like $35 this year. But some people can make
See what you free.
$150.
That's great. Lonny?
Yeah.
There's some questions.
Yeah.
So what happens to the data gathered by this app? Like, who owns it? Who can request access to it? How long is it stored for?
So it's owned by that company, Carbon Red in Canada. We have access to the backend so that way we know who qualifies for rewards when we're doing incentives. We get access to batch data for like reporting purposes and for VMT and GHG. And we get access to email addresses and names so that way we can communicate with people. We may even get phone number info for push text. We do not get mailing address information for anybody because we don't mail people for this program at all. And they are holding on to that information, I think probably, I don't know if it's permanently or if it's at least for a 6-year time frame. But they do not use the information or sell the information. And there's a whole bunch of disclaimers that are in there. And they are very strongly dedicated to not using that data or selling that data in the way that like Google or Waze might sell that data. Yeah. And we're trying to we're trying to come up with an alternative way than just giving your home address, like a PIN. But again, if you were to just fudge by like one number, or across the street, it'll work. The main thing is it needs to know that you ended your trip. It doesn't need to know your exact address. It's like, if you say your house was here, it's fine because it knows your home. But if you say your house was there, it may not know you finished your trip. And that's the one thing we're trying to get around. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if you're finished with it. I haven't seen any like programs that's centered around food. You know, like I see, like if you carpool with somebody, okay, they can take you to lunch with them, right? But there's some other programs that's like these people, they're thinking about lunch. Who's providing lunch if they do this, right? Like a parking ride. If you leave your car in a parking ride, take the metro, and you're not downtown, but there's a lot of restaurants. You can hike it 2 miles, 2 Wendy's or something.
This program does not address food. Yeah.
I think comment on the last slide, like the fee going up with the individual in the car. I've also experienced that not so much the dollar value, but another option would be if you're in a one-person vehicle, you have to park the furthest away.
Yeah.
So you kind of have like a walk of shame because you didn't carpool. And that almost might be more incentivizing because you're like, everyone can see if you did carpool because you come into the meeting while not sweaty and like, go to hell and stuff like that. But I didn't know if that can also be an option, where it doesn't really have any money involved, but for like events and parking and stuff, usually they will make the single drivers go somewhere further.
Yeah, we regularly push preferred parking, which we usually call princess parking, to get a laugh out of the investigations. But we've actually worked with the city to create official carpool van parking signage. And so we can get it printed and installed. And we've done Go grants for it, and we can do CPRG for it. But we explain that by putting those spots in a preferred location, you're not only rewarding everybody by giving them the best spots because they might come a little later than the drive alone, but also you're advertising the program because everyone has to walk by those spots on the right hand. So we're a big fan of it as well. Yeah.
Just curious, just a little bit out of pocket, but rideshare, Uber, Lyft, stuff like that. It obviously that doesn't contribute to reducing the amount of cars on any given time that's on the roadway. It might reduce parking, but not any given.
Yeah.
You have some great data out there, but do you have the data of how at any, during your 2 rush hour times, like how many rideshare out between Lyft, Uber, and what's that other one so popular? Anyway,
Yeah.
How many of those are making up that traffic?
I don't have that data on me. What was interesting though from the commuter survey is that the number of people who are carpooling, but also using microtransit like that is going down for getting to work. Now, they may be using it for other things throughout the day, but at least for that work commute, it's actually a smaller share than it was before the pandemic. But no, I don't have that data.
So you're saying less people are using rideshare to get to and from work?
Yeah. But they may be using it more overall for entertainment purposes or non-work trips. We had some similar responses with, for example, like transit use is going up for work commute, but it's not recovered back to 2019 for just general usage. And so people were surprised by that. Or bike commuting has gone up 5 times, 500% for work commute. So I guess all those bike lanes and the 6 are working, but I can't say that people are biking all day long, but their work commute has really made a difference. Yeah.
What about the micro mobility, last mile stuff like scooters?
Yeah. The scooter and bike stuff, all of that has increased considerably since 2019.
And y'all typically categorize those together?
Yeah, so the scooters are in one category because of the way the census has grouped them. So we can have them all separately and segregated, which is how we do it when we do the survey, but then we have to put them all back together so we can compare it to census data. And so we match them back at the end. So bikes and e-bikes were separated and we put them together. And then scooters, believe it or not, goes with Ubers and Lyfts because they're micro mobility.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So many of our members that work with defense, if they're on the same job site, will just carpool together because maybe not everyone has a car. But if the person who has a car, their car breaks down and they don't have the money to fix it, then everyone's out of luck and having to find other cars to get into. So has there been any conversation about some kind of repair fund or entering deals into local repair shops that maybe employees from our company get a discount from going to these places to get their car fixed or anything like that?
So we don't have that as part of this program yet. I would say though, that could make a compelling Go grant application if you were saying that you wanted to have a fund for repairs for people who were offering carpools. Now, I don't think it would work well for car repair just generally. You'd have to really make the case that it was going to those carpool folks. But that's a request we haven't gotten before, which is why it's not in the grant. But we would be open to funding that. Any other questions? I mean, that's really, I've just put up our contact information in case you needed us. You can always go to the website, which is movabilitytx.org for more information. And also we'd be happy to take the show on the road. So it does not have to be a presentation like this. I mean, certainly if you have opportunities for us to speak, I can do this in 10 minutes. I could do it in an hour. It's up to you on how much detail you want. But we would be just as happy to find opportunities to table and to be embedded in events that you're doing around town over the next few years. Just because the more people we can reach, the better. And again, it does not have to be a stand and deliver kind of thing. We're just as happy to be at your outdoor tabling event. Yeah.
Can you share these slides with the group back?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yes, definitely.
Charter school apply for
Yes, absolutely. Any Go Grant is open to any nonprofit and then to any business, private business that goes up to $10 million in receipts annually. That's a small business definition for New York City. And then after that, it becomes CPRG grant.
Super useful, thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you so much. This is
Well, thank you so much. Work with
And Movability does have a table in the back, so if you guys wanna engage in any additional conversations or have questions about starting the process, you know, for your transportation planning, for your association or company, they're here to help get that started.
And please take a cookie or something with you because I can't carry it all.
Yeah.
By the way.
Oh, yes. And then please visit Kate in the back. She'd be happy to talk. But thank you so much for your time this morning, and thank you to Workforce Solutions for making this event possible. Thank you.
It's good turn out.